Japan's answer to the economic blizzard of the Depression was war. First, an invasion of Manchuria, and then China. Japan has few natural resources and a rapidly increasing population. She determined to take the raw materials and living space that she wanted by force. Western reaction was disheartening. The League of Nations protested and President Hoover applied meaningless moral sanctions. Not surprisingly, the Japanese ignored both the League and Hoover. The campaign went well, and the militarists became the controlling factor in Japanese politics. As usual, it was the ordinary people who paid the price. The orgy of burning, looting, and mass murder which accompanied the Japanese onslaught aroused anger and sympathy in the democracies, but no action. This bloody war would drag on for 13 bitter years, and through it all moved the refugees.
Like the other democracies, we were not prepared for total war. Fortunately, under the Lend-Lease Act of March 1941, we had set out to become the arsenal of the free and fighting nations. We were determined to supply them with our war goods, whether they could afford to pay or not. We were buying time. Time to convert the industries of peace into war. Time to make ships, merchant ships and warships. Time to make planes and more planes, bombers and fighters, faster, more powerful than any the world had ever seen. Time to make guns and more guns, shells and more shells, tanks and more tanks. Time to gather the huge strength which was ours, to pour the great riches of American earth into the cauldron of war. Iron, steel, oil, coal. Time to build a navy called upon to fight in both oceans and upon all the seas, to convoy men and weapons to Australia, to Britain, to the Middle East, to Russia. A navy that had already undertaken daring raids upon the Gilbert and Marshall Islands and braved Japanese waters, and had taken a heavy toll of the invading forces in the Makassar Straits, and had won the first battle in the Coral Sea. Time to expand a miniature professional army into a modern war machine. Time to take civilians gathered in a peacetime conscription while we were still debating, to mold them into soldiers, train them in the use of new weapons, new tactics. And we were buying time to weld the home front and the fighting front into one. For this was total war, and we realized victories were born in the production line. We needed more ships, more planes, more tanks, more guns, more shells.
The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941, here dramatically shot by Japanese film crews for propaganda purposes, not only crippled America's Pacific fleet, it changed the course of history. Just the day before the raid, President Roosevelt had personally appealed to Emperor Hirohito not to drag their two countries into war. But it was too late. Japan had formed a secret pact with Germany to attack the Allied forces in Europe and in the Far East. America at that stage was neutral, but generally sympathetic to the Allied cause. This was an attempt to destroy American military power in the Pacific before she could strike back. After this massive attack, Europe's war became American, as Senator Connolly, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, made abundantly plain. Within hours of the Pearl Harbor raid, American Army and Navy officers were called from their homes and weekend golf clubs to meet at the War Department to prepare to retaliate. President Roosevelt officially informed Congress that a state of war now existed between the United States and Japan. Within hours, Congress gave him the authority to prosecute the conflict all out. The legacy of the raid was enormous. 5 American battleships were sunk or damaged beyond repair. 200 aircraft were destroyed and more than 2,400 people killed. But more than that, Pearl Harbor led directly to what truly became the Second World War.